Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our latest webinar from Sporty's. We thank you for joining us today. We're going to look at 10 trends in pilot supplies. We appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us to learn the latest of what's going on in the world of aviation and pilot supplies. I think we have a lot in store for you here in this presentation, some trends that are affecting the way all of us fly, and frankly, just some neat products that you may either be flying with or may want to think about. We're pleased to have you with us. A couple of quick housekeeping notes as we get started here today. I want to make sure you know that this presentation will be recorded and available through the archive. So if you have to step away for a minute, or if you know somebody who wanted to be here and couldn't make it, let them know about that. It'll be available at sportys.com/webinars in just a couple of days. And it'll also be on our YouTube channel. So feel free to check that out and share that. Also, we'll be taking questions today, so if you have a question, feel free to ask away. You can see the questions box in the right-hand side of your screen there in the GoToWebinar software. Feel free to ask that at any time. We'll try to save a little bit of time at the end of this presentation so that we can get to some of those questions. My name is John Zimmerman. I'm one of your hosts tonight. I'm glad to be here with you. I am joined by Doug Ranley, who will also be presenting with me. Doug and I both work at Sporty's. We're both on the new product development team there at Sporty's, so we have a pretty fun job in that we get to fly with a lot of new products, have a lot of fun checking out what's new, trying the latest technology, which is a lot of fun. But really, we come to you tonight, as we often do in these webinars, more as just pilots. Doug and I are both active pilots. We fly a variety of general aviation aircraft, and we do it because we love it. So more than anything tonight, I think you'll see Doug and I sharing with you our opinions as pilots flying with this equipment in the real world. I wanted to start tonight with a quick poll before we dive into our 10 trends in pilot supplies. So throw a quick poll up just to get a sense for who we have with us tonight. You should see on the screen there, quick poll about how many hours you fly a year, just to get a sense for those of you who are pilots, how much you're logging. So take a second, pick an option there and hit submit, and we'll total up the results. Most of the results in here, we've got a pretty even split, it looks like. Actually, the most popular is 50 to 100 hours, but do have a number of pilots flying 100 hours or more per year. And then about 45 of you flying less than 50 hours a year. So pretty good split, but definitely some active pilots out there. Okay, so we're going to dive right in. We have 10 trends tonight to cover, and we'll admit right up front we have a bonus one as well. But get started with 10 trends tonight. Things that we really see affecting pilot supplies and kind of changing the gear that pilots fly with, what Doug and I have seen lately. So let's take a look at those. And we'll start off with, of course, no presentation about general aviation these days would be complete without talking about tablets and the iPad. And some of you may be sick of hearing about that, think, when do we stop talking about the iPad? But I want to encourage you tonight to think of it as really the broader picture here, which is that tablets are becoming retrofit avionics for a lot of airplanes. And that may sound really grand, but I think you know what I mean, many of you. At the end of the day, if you're a renter or you're a member of a flying club, you don't control the avionics in the panel of the airplane you fly. So it's not up to you. And so an iPad or another tablet can be a really powerful way for you to take your avionics with you. We also see that with a lot of older airplanes. The average general aviation airplane is over 40 years old. And as we all know, those airplanes have plenty of life left in them. A 1979 Cherokee or a 1975 172 is a great airplane. But one of the more reasonable, efficient, cost-effective, and even powerful ways you can equip that panel these days is with an iPad or another tablet. So I think these tablets, far beyond just being sort of a gimmick or a gadget that people like to have, I think it's really changing the way many people on the lighter end of general aviation think about avionics. So what's new? Well, we have to start with the apps. After all, the best iPad is worthless without some software to do something with it. And really, we see right now sort of the big three. There are lots and lots of apps, and we won't get into all of them. But the big three that seems like most pilots are flying with are ForeFlight Mobile, Garmin Pilot, WingX Pro 7. This is sort of the Coke, Pepsi, RC Cola. So everybody has their favorite, and that's fine. All three of these companies have been pretty active in the last year, which is really the time frame we're mostly talking about tonight. And they've added a number of new features. We won't hit them all, but wanted to show a couple of the more recent ones, a couple of things that you may find interesting in each of these apps. ForeFlight's probably been the most active. They've added a number of things over the past year, a number of new features. They seem to roll out new features about every 6 weeks. One of my favorite ones is this Procedure Advisor that you see here on the screen. Procedure Advisor is great for IFR pilots because it's a way to load up instrument arrivals, instrument departures, but also approaches. You see here an approach picture where you can load up all the waypoints. It'll make it your active flight plan, and it'll even overlay the approach plate on your moving map. It's a tremendous amount of information on one screen, something that a lot of us probably couldn't even dream of 10 or 15 years ago. This works really, really well. The one thing I'd point out on Procedure Advisor, though, is if you're a VFR pilot, you're not out of luck. There's a neat traffic pattern advisor here as well that can help you make the perfect entry into the pattern at your local airport. Another major feature that ForeFlight has added, and this is a feature that is available in Garmin Pilot and WingX as well, but ForeFlight added not too long ago was synthetic vision. And so you get this beautiful 3D picture of terrain and obstacles and airports around you. A great situational awareness tool for IFR pilots, no doubt, but I think just as valuable for VFR pilots. This is great for finding, a runway on a hazy day, or great for watching those towers if you're flying low level. You can also add a backup attitude source to this and get a real-time pitch and roll. So it's really like a portable glass cockpit. And we'll talk about that here in a minute when we talk about some of the accessories. So along with that synthetic vision, one other feature to point out is a kind of interesting one that's coming on recently, which is that Garmin and ForeFlight, who are in many ways competitors, are working together in at least one sense, in that through Garmin's Connect program with a product called FlightStream, you can connect your tablet to your Garmin panel mount avionics. If you install one of these FlightStream devices, you can then push weather, traffic, and flight plans back and forth between the panel and your iPad. You do obviously need to have a panel installed ADS-B receiver like a GDL88 or a GDL84 if you're going to do that. But if you have some Garmin avionics in your panel, there's some neat options for you as a ForeFlight user now, in addition to the Garmin Pilot app. Garmin Pilot has also added a number of features. Just the one I wanted to highlight here, they announced at Oshkosh 2015, and it's a logbook, and it's a really pretty powerful logbook. It's almost automatic. It'll pretty much log your flight for you once you fly it. It's backed up to the Fly Garmin website, and it's a really valuable feature, especially if you're flying different aircraft or if you're filling out insurance forms. There's a lot of features in there, so if you're a Garmin Pilot user, I encourage you to check out that logbook feature because I think you'll find a lot there that you like. WingX Pro 7 hasn't had quite as many updates. They did just recently release WingX for Android, which is a big release. As far as the iOS app, one of the more notable features they've added recently is this Tracka technology. What that means is you can trace your finger on the map on the screen, and then it will automatically create a flight plan based on that route. So it's a really easy way to plan a deviation around weather, which you see here, or maybe just planning for obstacles or terrain or for a great view. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You really just trace your route on the map, and the app does the rest for you. Now, beyond those apps, once you have an app by itself, can be fairly static. It's sort of a document viewer if you don't add to it. So a lot of pilots have added GPSs over the years to make their iPads moving map GPSs. But the latest thing the last 3 or so years has been the ADS-B receiver. These portable devices really kind of turbocharge your iPad. They can add subscription-free weather, traffic, GPS. Some of them have attitude, and they're wireless, so they're really handy, again, if you're a renter or a flying club, or if you just don't want any more wires in your cockpit. It's a really great way to make your iPad app do more than ever without having to do an expensive installation and without having to do a whole bunch of wires. One of the reasons ADS-B receivers have really taken off recently is that the FAA's ground station network is complete. The ADS-B weather is transmitted subscription-free, which is great, but it does depend on ground stations. But as you can see here, we have a map from the FAA of estimated coverage at 5,000 feet, and coverage is outstanding almost everywhere in the US. Just a couple of tiny pockets over the Mountain West, really. So with this build out of the ADS-B network, coverage for most pilots with ADS-B is excellent, really from pattern altitude up. And I think that's really turbocharged the adoption of most of these portable ADS-B receivers. That plus the lack of subscription for the weather makes it a pretty compelling value. The most recent ADS-B receivers to be released is the Stratus 1S and 2S. These devices are updates to the very popular Stratus portable ADS-B receiver. It's made by Appario in collaboration with us at Sporty's and also with Fore. There's two models here. The 1S is a really great tool, I think, for VFR pilots. It's an affordable way to get weather, GPS, and traffic. So if you want that moving map and you want to keep your eye on the radar and the local METARs, this is a great way to do that. Stratus 2S is really the full-featured, souped-up, all the bells and whistles, and it's probably also a great option for IFR pilots. Of note, it adds an AHRS, so that offers the backup attitude presentation, which you see there on the left side of that split screen. And that's really helpful for IFR pilots. Certainly not a primary reference, but it's great for backup. It also adds a flight data recorder and a pressure altitude sensor, and that's $8.99. The point with these ADS-B receivers is they're really moving beyond just weather. Initially, ADS-B receivers was a great way to get weather in your iPad, and that's probably still the #1 benefit for them. Keeping track of weather en route is a great thing for both safety and comfort, but they're really growing up beyond just the weather. The traffic is a nice benefit. The backup attitude is really important for some pilots. That flight data recorder, you see a screenshot here, an example where we've logged some pattern work. And then come back and you can replay that flight in Google Earth, for example. So I think a trend to watch here is that these ADS-B receivers are starting to grow up a little bit, and we're in the 2nd or 3rd generation now where they're doing more than just present weather. Now, beyond the iPad apps and the ADS-B receivers, there's some other great iPad gear out there. Honestly, too much to detail, but wanted to highlight a couple of mounts and a knee board for you here, because at Sporty's, we think an essential iPad gear bag would be an iPad with your favorite app and either a GPS or an ADS-B receiver. But then crucially, you want to have some way to secure it in the cockpit, because you don't want to have a tablet flying around the cockpit in turbulence or on takeoff and landing. So it's either a mount or a knee board. That's really a personal preference. Some people are mount people, some people are knee board people. If you're a mount person, the Pivot is a great option, which you see here. It's really 3 products in one. So you see it here. It's got a really rugged case around the iPad, so you can drop this thing on a corner and it will not break. It's also got a nice smart screen cover, so when you open the screen cover, the screen automatically comes on. When you close it up, it goes off. That screen cover is also a stand, so it's great for non-aviation use. But then when you take it in the cockpit, there's this really easy on and off suction cup mount. So it's a great way to mount it to a side window. When you're done flying, you can slide it out of the suction cup mount, put the cover on, put it in your briefcase. So a lot of us at Sporty's here have started flying with the Pivot because it's a nice kind of everyday case that goes into an aviation feature very, very easily. If you're more of the kneeboard kind, there's a great option now with this bifold kneeboard, and there are plenty of kneeboard options, so there's something for really almost everybody. This is the most popular one we see because it's pretty flexible. It's a bifold style, so you can either lay it across your lap or put the iPad on your leg and let the right-hand panel rest down against your leg. It has a tilt feature, so you can tilt the iPad screen and get rid of that screen glare. It can also be used in portrait or landscape mode, which is handy. It's got some storage pockets, and if you're in a tight cockpit, you can even fold this thing in half. So it's really just a single panel kneeboard. It's been redesigned to fit the iPad Air and the Air 2 and the Mini. And again, if you're looking for, I think, a great everyday kneeboard that is really flexible and gives you some options, this is one that we see more and more pilots flying with. Now, probably the most popular option for mounting for the last few years with the iPad has been RAM mounts, and those are still a great option. There are some new things from RAM. One of my favorite personally is this new yoke mount. It's a claw style mount. That's the one you see there at the top. It's much faster and easier to attach to the yoke, I think. For those of you who maybe have flown with the older Ram yoke mount, it works well, but it's kind of a pain to get on and off. There's a long screw mechanism, and it just kind of gets in the way. This claw is a really more robust system. It's easier to go on and off, and it fits more diameter yokes. You can use this all kinds of places. So the best part about Ram mounts is if you already have an iPad cradle and you have a Ram arm and you just want to change to that claw, you don't have to rebuy the whole system. You can just buy that new claw piece. So it's an easy way to upgrade if you're using the yoke mount approach. If you like the suction cup mount, Ram has come out with a double suction cup. It's probably overkill in your Cessna or your Cirrus, but especially some turbine pilots, airline pilots really like this when you get into higher cabin altitudes where the suction cups can sometimes pop off. They like to have two of them. That's a good option that's now available. And there's also this neat double socket swivel arm. That's just a way to add another joint in your Ram arm. So if you're trying to do some type of interesting flexible mounting solution, that's an option. I encourage you to check out the full Ram mount lineup on sporties.com because there are all kinds of options. If you can dream of it, you can pretty much build it with Ram. That's the great advantage there. It's a very flexible system. The last iPad item we want to talk about, really tablets, not iPad specific, is a battery pack. So we talked about having the iPad and having the app, having a GPS or ADS-B receiver, and then securing it in the cockpit. The last piece, I think, for a really great iPad setup in the cockpit is backup power. The most common reason for an iPad to stop working is it's going to run out of power because you forgot to charge it or your flight went longer than expected. You can do that with a cigarette lighter plug, and those work great. But if you don't have a cigarette lighter plug, or if you're looking for a standalone option, these battery packs can be a great deal. Really the best one I've seen yet is this one you see on screen. The reason I say that is it's pretty small and it's relatively lightweight, but it still packs a really big battery in there. It's over a 20,000 milliamp hour battery that will recharge your iPad or a Stratus or a GPS multiple times. And importantly, it has two 2.4 amp charging plugs. Those of you who've been flying with the iPad or tablets much, you know that your phone is happy with a 1 amp charger, but your tablet really needs a 2 amp charger, and not all of these battery packs have that. So this one's got two of them. It's got a great battery size in it. It's well made. It meets the FAA guidance on battery packs, so we're big fans of this one. We're going to leave iPad behind now. We could give an entire presentation on iPad. In fact, we do. The only thing I'll say is if you want to dig deeper on the iPad or if you're just getting started with the iPad, we do a website called iPad Pilot News. I'd encourage you to check that out. It's a great website. It's free, and it's not packed with information with tips and tricks and videos, webinar recordings. A lot of good info there if you want to dive deeper on the iPad and stay up to date with what's new. With that, we're going to leave tablets behind and shift to our second trend, which is sort of an adjacent trend, and this is smartwatches. Smartwatches are one of the hotter things on the market these days. Of course, this started with maybe the Pebble smartwatch, but the Apple Watch is really what has got all the press over the last year or so. The Apple Watch has hit the streets, and it syncs up with your iPhone, and you can run Apple Watch apps right there on your wrist. Now, the Apple Watch is hardly a replacement for an iPad. It's a nice to have in our opinion. We've done plenty of flying with it, and it's neat, it's helpful. There are some actual practical applications of it. Certainly not a must-have at all, but wanted to at least point out a couple interesting apps here that we've flown with. If you are thinking about the Apple Watch or if you have it, these are some apps we've used that work pretty well. Each of them kind of has a specialty. That ForeFlight Mobile, obviously the most popular app on the iPad, has a neat Apple Watch app. But there's some other lesser known ones, like that Nearest app. All that does is show you the nearest airports, where they are, how far away, and what the runway is. That's an example where a really simple app on the watch works well. It's not trying to do too much. It's just right there as a backup. Some of the other ones take advantage of the iPhone's pressure altitude sensor, so you can get like a little vertical speed indicator and altimeter on your wrist. Again, none of this stuff is must-have, but it's pretty interesting. And if you have an Apple Watch, I'd encourage you to check out some of these aviation watches because there are some useful things you can do with it. If you want a more dedicated aviation smartwatch, that's what I would turn you towards the Garmin D2 Bravo. Garmin D2 Bravo is from the leaders in aviation electronics and avionics from Garmin. It's their second generation smartwatch, and it's got a lot of improvements over the original D2 watch. It's got a color screen, which is a big step up. It comes with two different bands. You see here the black kind of rubber band also comes with a really great looking brown leather band. And it can do an awful lot. It does have a built-in GPS, so you can do direct-to navigation. It's got a built-in airport database, so you can go direct to a 4-letter identifier. It's got a basic moving map. It even has a compass and an altimeter in it. So it's really a multifunction watch. Again, I don't think anybody would suggest you fly an ILS to 200.5 with this watch, but it's nice to have. It's not a bad backup, and it's a great everyday watch as well. It's got complete fitness features, so if you want to run with it or bike with it, it's got all those fitness tracking features on it. It can also pair up to your smartphone. You see the screen there at the bottom is a notifications view where you can get notifications of emails or phone calls or things like that. So it's not just for aviation. It's got plenty of uses in day-to-day life, but it does have the advantage of having that built-in GPS and that built-in airport database. It's been a hot seller so far, and we expect it will be certainly at Christmas coming up. With that, I'm going to step aside and let Doug take you through the next couple trends.
Well, thank you, John, and it's good to be here to share some of our passion for some of these products that we've been introducing this year. And one of those that seems to have come a long way are cameras, and they really have come commonplace into the cockpit. There's two major players in the camera market, and that's the Garmin and the GoPro. And both of these are great, and we've seen them becoming more and more common for anyone that's flying. Our flight school has 14 aircraft out there, and we see them a lot for students recording and replaying their flight training. Of course, social media has changed the way a lot of people share their experiences, and GoPro and Garmin cameras make great conduits for doing that. Now, the cameras by themselves aren't perfect. They do need two things to make them great for aviation, and that's where these prop filters and audio cables come in. The prop filter helps take the lines out of the propeller. If anyone has tried to take a picture through the front of the aircraft with a smartphone, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. That filter really smooths that prop out and takes all the lines away. The audio cable allows you to plug into a standard aircraft intercom system and record what you're hearing, whether it's you, ATC, or your passengers. You get all that good stuff onto your video now. With that being said, we're going to move on to the Garmin Verb XC camera. That is the latest and greatest from Garmin, and Garmin, being an aviation company at heart, has a specific model for aviation, which includes that prop filter and the audio cable. So now we can use this in the cockpit without having to worry about all those small problems you might have with other cameras. Garmin, of course, is a GPS company, so they put a GPS inside of their camera. This allows you to overlay your GPS track on Google Earth, or if you can see the bottom right-hand side of those screenshots we have there, it'll actually put the track onto the image, which is really cool. The examples you see there are two students flying their first solo, and you can see them all the way around the pattern, making a perfect rectangular course. And we also have their ground speed and altitude there on the left-hand side. The Garmin also plays well with the Pilot app as well as the D2 watch, so there's some integration aspects there. Cameras wouldn't be complete without talking about GoPro. GoPro's kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the camera world, and their newest cameras are the HERO4. And they got lots of different options here. Their top of the line is called the HERO4 Black. It has a 4K 30 frame per second record rate, which is by far one of the fastest record rates out there. It's really made for professional video. This is what you'll find most of the movie makers out there putting on helmets and bike tubes and doing flips and stuff. So that's really for the professionals out there. The HERO4 Silver is one of our personal favorite ones for GoPro. It still records in HD at 1080p, 60 frames per second, so you get a nice, smooth video. It also has a viewfinder built into the back, whereas the Black does not. Having that built-in viewfinder allows you to see exactly what you've recorded, and you can also do some basic editing features on it. GoPro introduced a new camera this year. It's called the Session. And it is really a small camera, that has a decent record rate, and it's really ideal for remote mounting. Given its size, we kind of nicknamed it the drone camera because it's lightweight, it's small, and you can put these in out-of-the-way spots, and they don't really interfere with anything. Perfect for mounting on a wingtip. What everyone asks when we look at these things are, well, how much do they cost? And that's a key differentiator when looking at the entire line. Garmin might be at the higher end there at $499.99, but it includes a couple key features: the prop filter and the intercom cable. If you look at the GoPro side, you still have cameras that range from $300 to $500, but you have to buy those filters and cables separately. Usually you can find the cable for about $50 and the filters about another $50, depending on where you find it. So when it's all said and done, they're very similar. We really like the Garmin in this aspect because of all that stuff's already included, but you can't go wrong on any of those models. Up next, we want to talk about flight gear bags, because everyone needs at least 10 of these bags, and if I get one more, I think my wife is going to divorce me. But they're a lot of fun to have around, and we've come up with some new ones this year. This is the Flight Gear iPad bag, and this is the bag that I use. I really like this one, but it has a lot of pockets that are dedicated for the gear that you use all the time. For instance, you see the radio there on the left-hand side. On the opposite side, there's a water bottle pocket. And then on the back, we have a custom padded iPad sleeve, which is really great for bringing along your tablet. The middle compartment's perfect for headsets and GPSs and any other stuff that you can possibly imagine. And it does fit perfectly at the front of a Cessna between the front two seats there of a 182. The next bag we have there is the CFI bag, and this was designed by several of our CFIs here at Sporty's Academy. It's really the right amount of space for a CFI that's going on quick trips. So you have a dedicated headset pocket in the middle, again a water bottle and a transceiver pocket, and a spot for your iPad. It's lightweight and easily thrown behind a seat without getting in the way of anything else. There's some new bags out there from a group called Flight Outfitters. With names like the Lift and the Thrust, they have to be made for aviation, and they really live up to the name. They're innovative in the way they store their stuff, really custom designed pockets for all aviation gear, and it has a modern appeal to it. The one on the right there is called the Thrust, and it is a sling pack, which is the first sling pack we've ever seen in aviation. And I think a lot of us are using those as office bags. That's a good spot for a computer, as well as a iPad, a headset, and just the common aspects that you bring around day to day. And then MyGoFlight came out with a new flight bag this year called the PLC Pro. And it has tons of pockets. It's really well made with padded sleeves for computers, iPads, headsets, specific pockets for batteries, backup batteries. It has the ability to be a shoulder bag or a backpack, but it is the most expensive option out of all four of these. All these bags are able to be embroidered at Sporty, so you can put your name or your company logo on them, and that really makes it a personalized option for a lot of pilots.
Thanks, Doug. I'll take it back here, and we're going to talk about trend number 5 here. We're going to talk about training a little bit. And when we talk about training, we're really talking about home study here. The training you do in the airplane, you still got to go fly the airplane, but there's a lot of advances that have been made so that you can do a lot of that work at home and get ahead. And we're big believers in that at Sporty's, that if you do the work at home and show up prepared for your lessons, it can have a big impact on the time, the expense, and the frustration that might be involved in flight training. So the first thing I'll start with is, if you are still using VHS, or honestly almost ready to say it about DVDs as well, it's time to replace those, because that's really sort of a video mentality where you sit back and you watch the video, and that's great, and you can get an awful lot out of that. We certainly work real hard at Sporty's on creating great videos, but the latest versions delivered either as an online course or as an app really kind of take that training to the next level because it's more interactive. So you have a lot more options for interacting with the app. There are more options for resources. The other great advantage here is updates. It's a lot easier to get a new update. We just added 4 hours of new video to the Learn to Fly course at Sporty's. And, on a DVD, you can send in and get the new DVDs, but it's kind of a hassle. Whereas online, that new video is automatically there next time you log in. So it's a much better way, especially if you want to use these as sort of a continuing education library. There's a lot of great options there. Some new features that have been added to our Learn to Fly course, which is really our flagship course, is our number one, automatic written test endorsement. One of the most valuable things about these courses, again, that goes beyond just a video, is that we will give you, from our flight instructors, an endorsement to go take your written test. So if you want to study for your written test and go take that test before you even walk in the flight school for a lesson, before you even have a flight instructor, this course will take care of that for you, because the flight instructors at Sporty's will review your practice test progress and give that to you. There's also a new Ask a CFI feature. Again, you get to leverage the expertise of Sporty's Academy, our on-site flight school where you have 30 flight instructors. If you're stuck in the course and you have a question about crosswind landings or VOR navigation, you can tap into the expertise at Sporty's and ask one of our CFIs for clarification. So again, that interactivity piece really pays off. And then I mentioned the video. We did just release over 5 hours of new HD video in the course, and we're working on even more. We're always working on this course to keep it up to date. So as regulations change, as technology changes, we can bring you the latest information. Lots of information at sportys.com/courses. You can even take a test drive of the course, see what it's all about. Beyond just primary training, we have the course for Learn to Fly and also instrument rating. But we talk to a lot of pilots who use these programs as well for recurrent training, or maybe they've been out of flying for a couple of years and want to get back into it. They're very, very valuable for that. If you already have your license and maybe you don't need one of those courses, we also just in the past year or so did release a full suite of online courses on other topics like flight review, instrument proficiency check, communications, and a full add a rating series. So if you're looking to add a seaplane rating or a multi-engine rating or a helicopter rating or a glider rating, we have courses for each of those. So there's really a training program for every kind of pilot. And like the old cliche goes, a good pilot is always learning. So I encourage you, whether it's one of our programs or one of the other ones out there, take some time over the next year and make sure you're doing some type of regular training just to stay sharp. It's certainly never been easier. The days of having to send away for a box of VHS tapes is gone, and the features and the updates have never been better. Another big trend in training is at the other end of the spectrum, and that's on the ATP side for the airline transport pilot. It was a sad day, but unfortunately it had lasting impact. Colgan Air flight crashed going into Buffalo, New York a few years back, and as a result of that, there's a new rule, a new ATP rule that requires, if you're going to get a multi-engine ATP, before you can even go take the written test or the knowledge test as it's called, you have to complete what's called an ATP certification training program, or ATP CTP. Just what we need in aviation, another acronym. But a lot of people, I think, have been caught flat-footed by this, maybe didn't realize the date of effectiveness on it. It's been effective for over a year now. So if you're going to go take that written exam, you need to take one of these courses, and it's a pretty involved course. It's not something you can do online. It's mandated by the FAA that it includes 30 hours of classroom training and 10 hours of simulator training, and at least 6 hours of that has to be in a full flight simulator. So again, this is not something you can do at home, and you probably can't even really do it at your local flight school. You really need to partner with a professional training organization. Most of the options out there for ATP CTP have been universities. So if you're at Embry-Riddle or one of the larger flight schools like that, they have some of that ATP CTP training. But for the average pilot who just wanted to go out and do this and get their ATP, there really haven't been many options at all. That's where Sporty's has stepped in and created an ATP CTP course. It's not affiliated with any university, so you can go as just a regular old pilot, no 4-year commitment or 2-year commitment or anything like that. We've been able to do this by partnering with ABX Airlines, which is a company based in Wilmington, Ohio, and they have a really first-rate training organization there. Great airline instructors with experience flying airline equipment, great full motion simulators, really great classroom facilities. So by partnering with AVX, we're offering a 1-week class. It's Monday through Thursday in the classroom, and then Thursday afternoon through Saturday in the simulator. And it covers all the bases, gets you 30 hours of ground, your 10 hours of simulator, everything you need. It's $45.95, which is one of the lowest prices out there. So certainly not everybody's going for an ATP, but if you are, you know somebody who is, we're trying to offer a solution here that doesn't require a massive month-long commitment, or even more than that, a university commitment. Now for trend number 7, I'm going to turn it back to Doug, who's going to talk about sunglasses.
Oh, what's new in pilot sunglasses? You know, spend 2 days at Oshkosh and you'll see sunglasses that range from $5 gas station specials all the way up to $500 shade and flip-up sunglasses. So the gamut is there, and we kind of try to debug what's good and what's bad. So here's what to look for. For starters, non-polarized sunglasses are the way to go for aviation. Many of our instruments, GPSs, and even some iPads have some sort of polarization screen protector on them. So depending on how you look at them, they might disappear, which the first time it happened to me in the cockpit, you can imagine my mini panic when the 430 went dark. But moving your head, removing the sunglasses, it brings it right back up. But save yourself that heart murmur and don't buy polarized sunglasses for the cockpit. Look for lens clarity. Temple thickness is a big one. Let's face it, we're going to be using headsets with these things. So the thicker the temples, the more the gap is going to be there. A lot of headsets say they work great with sunglasses. Well, most of them do, but the thicker your temple, the worse they're going to work. And then the last thing there is built-in readers, and that's really what's been new in aviation, is some new players with these built-in reading lenses in their sunglasses. Dual eyewear is one of our favorites. It has really thin temples, as we mentioned before, so it's not going to affect any of the headsets out there. There's no polarization, and it has the built-in reading lenses in there, and they have several different magnification levels to choose from. So as our eyes age, these become really nice in the cockpit. Another player out there is known as Flying Eyes, and they make a pair of sunglasses that not only has the built-in reading lenses, but they have interchangeable temples. So for this instance, if you're going flying, they have a band that can snap into the sides, and now you don't have any rigid temple whatsoever. It's just like a strap that goes around your head, and those don't interfere with your headset at all, so those are pretty neat. The next trend we have up here is flashlights in the cockpits, and I think everyone needs at least 5 flashlights in their bags, and I know I have at least 5 ready to go at a moment's notice. But here's what to look for when you're buying a flashlight for aviation. It's important to have both red and white light available. White, of course, is great for pre-flight, to look around the airplane for inspecting everything, and then red in the cockpit for preserving your night vision. Independent color selection is another thing we really like. Let's face it, if you have to scroll through the white light to get to the red light, it's kind of pointless. It's going to ruin your night vision right away. So we really like lights that have 2 different buttons, one for red, one for white. Simplicity, if you have to read a manual in order to use the flashlight, that's probably a bad thing. And then, of course, standard batteries. AA's, AAA's, the standard alkalines are usually best for what we're trying to do. Rechargeables are okay if you keep them charged up, but let's face it, most of us go flying at night probably once every 3 or 4 months. And when you reach back there to grab that flashlight, you hope it's charged. If it's not, you're going to be fishing around for a cell phone or for a backup that has real batteries in it. Things to avoid. My first one there is kind of a surprise for a lot of people, but really bright light is a bad thing in aviation. Obviously, if you're outside and you have 1,000 lumen light for pre-flight, that might be okay if you stand back about 100 yards. But as you get closer to the airplane or even in the cockpit and you try to blare that bright light, it's really going to set your eyes out of night vision and do more harm than good. So be careful about buying a flashlight that has 800 lumens and then using it for aviation. Incandescent bulbs are kind of a thing of the past. Everything's going to LED, but there are still some out there. LEDs are quite a bit better in the fact that they really don't break. They'll last forever, and you don't have to change any bulbs. And then that last one there, multi-purpose devices. You see flashlights with knives and pliers and bottle openers and all sorts of things on them. It's jack of all trades and master of none. Try to stick to flashlights that do what they're supposed to do. Just light up the area. We have a couple new lights available here at Sporty's. This is one of our favorites. This new little Smith & Wesson hands-free light has a clip on the back that you can put on a seat belt or on your shirt, on your pocket, wherever. And it puts out a really impressive amount of light. There's only one button on the top, but if you press that one button, the red light comes on. There's two red LEDs. You press it again, you have the second red light comes on, so you have even more red light. To get to the white light, you physically have to hold that button down for about 2 seconds, and then that really bright white light comes on. So inadvertent activation in the cockpit just means you have red light, not white light. It's a kind of a unique model, and at 20 bucks, it's a real steal. So we really like that one. And then we have a new headlamp out there from the guys who make the flight bags, Flight Outfitters. And it's the first headlamp that we've ever seen that was really designed specifically for aviation. You have 2 buttons, so you don't have to scroll through white to get to red or vice versa, and high and low settings on each type of light. The focusing white light is done there with that center orange ring, so you have a floodlight or a spotlight. And we really like because you can turn on the red light, and if you want to flip over to the white light, the white button, the red light automatically turns off. And for instance, let's say we have it on the white light, the high beam, and we want to turn it off. We don't have to scroll through the low white to turn it back off. After 5 seconds on any setting, the next button push will automatically turn the headlamp off. So it's really kind of innovative on how it works for pilots in the cockpit. And now we'll throw back over to John to talk about headsets.
Thanks, Doug. We're going to wrap up here with an interesting topic, no doubt. Everybody flies with a headset, and there is so much technology in headsets these days, it's kind of unbelievable. You know, headsets used to be a pretty low-tech thing. You put on the earmuffs, and you had a mic, and that was it. That's certainly changed, as all of us who have flown in the last 10 years know. The innovation at the high end from some of these brands you see here, like AKG and Bose and Lightspeed and David Clark and Sennheiser, they're really devoting the attention to this that used to be only devoted to things like GPSs and radios. There's really a lot going on in these headsets. Some of the trends you see on the high end, in particular, multiple ANR microphones. So the way ANR works, active noise reduction works, is that a microphone listens for the noise, and then it computes the sound, basically the same sound but out of phase. And by emitting that sound through a speaker, it electronically cancels the noise. Well, one of the ways to really crank up the ANR performance is to have a microphone on the outside of the ear cup and the inside of the ear cup. And you're starting to see that with more and more headsets. Digital ANR is another new one where they use a lot of sophisticated electronics and basically a built-in computer to sense the noise and to cancel it. A new field is this sense of this idea of adaptive ANR, where the active noise reduction isn't just a fixed profile, but it tries to adapt to both your airplane or your ear shape to even provide even better noise reduction. You can see how quickly we're getting into technology stuff here. And then high-end Bluetooth features. So a lot of pilots really like to have Bluetooth connection so they can wirelessly connect their phone to their headset. This is great for being on the ground and maybe calling flight service to open or close a flight plan. It's also great for passengers who want to listen to music. I think one of the things that doesn't get appreciated enough, though, are these last 2 bullets. We talk about the technology with ANR and with Bluetooth, but really comfort and service are just as important. And a lot of companies have kind of stopped chasing the latest bells and whistles and started thinking about that ownership experience and comfort and how light is the headset, how does it feel on your ears, how's the head pad, how are the ear seals, things like that really, really matter. Because we could make a perfectly quiet headset that weighed 40 pounds and felt like a vice clamp, but it wouldn't do any good. So we have to focus on comfort as well, and you're starting to see that in particular with people like Bose and with David Clark with the new lighter weight headset. And then service on all these headsets. If something should break on your headset, it's just been impressive to me, just as a pilot and a consumer, to see how these companies really do stand behind their product. That's really true pretty much across the board with these brands. Wanted to highlight a couple of specific headsets and what's new here. The Lightspeed Zulu PFX is Lightspeed's latest and greatest. It's their top-of-the-line headset. It has all kinds of that fancy digital and adaptive ANR and high-end Bluetooth features. It's a great, great headset. One of the most unique things about it, though, is that it basically has a computer in it, and that computer can be firmware upgraded, meaning the software that runs that computer can be upgraded. What this allows Lightspeed to do is add new features or tune up performance, and without you having to send the headset back in for service, they can do it with a software upgrade. Pretty neat idea. This is the only headset that can do that, and Lightspeed did release their first firmware upgrade earlier in 2015 that it unlocks some better battery life, some better ANR performance. So it's a neat headset, and it's something to watch as they add more features to it with that firmware option. Another great option from Lightspeed is the Sierra. It's really, I think, the best value in ANR headsets. It's under $700, but you get all kinds of high-end features. Comfortable headset. It's got Bluetooth for both phone and audio. It'll work with the Lightspeed app. There's really a lot of interesting things with this headset, and for that price, I think you get a lot of bang for the buck. Previously, this headset could do Bluetooth phone connection, but it would not do audio. So for passengers, that was kind of a no-go for some of them. Just this year, they've added audio. So now in addition to connecting your phone and making a phone call, you can stream music for you or for your passengers. So a small thing, but a nice upgrade, like I said, especially for passengers. And then the other headset worth pointing out is the Bose A20. Probably the top of the heap, best-selling headset in aviation. A great headset with lots of features, great comfort, probably wins on comfort if you talk to pilots. Seems like maybe the Lightspeed by a hair is the quietest and the Bose is the most comfortable. Certainly both of them excellent products. But one of the shortcomings of the Bose to a certain extent was, like the Lightspeed Sierra, it had Bluetooth for phone, but it never had Bluetooth for audio. They have fixed that this year. An enhanced A20 came out with Bluetooth audio. One other minor thing that's a really nice fix is if you have one of the LEMO connectors, that is a model of the Bose that plugs into the panel and receives panel power, not your typical twin PJ plugs. That's a great feature because it prevents you from having to carry batteries. Well, what it'll do now is it'll automatically turn on the ANR. So when you turn on the master switch or the avionics switch and power is applied to the headset, it automatically turns on. A small thing, but a handy thing and a nice upgrade. The A20 is still the same price, $1,095.95 with Bluetooth, and better than ever. So you'll continue to see Bose and Lightspeed and also AKG and Sennheiser really shoot it out here at the top. And for the most part, pilots are the winner of that because these headsets are just getting better and better every day. Going to turn it back to Doug now for some hidden gems.
The hidden gems. Some people at Sporty's laughingly call me the hidden gem expert, and I'm not sure which way to take that. But anyway, there's a lot of oddball products we get into Sporty's, and some of them are really great. The first one I want to talk about is this new carbon monoxide detector from Tocsin. It's really made for aviation, not your tip-of-the-run CO detector. So many of them that are out there are made for either boats or home use. They're not portable. They're not perfect for aircraft, and many of them say on them not to use in airplanes. This one does not have that disclaimer. This was really made for our use here. It has 3 alert modes, and they all go off at the same time. So you have the vibration, so you can feel it. You have a really loud audible beep, and then you also have these bright flashing lights. So if you can't get one of those alerts, you might not have a heartbeat, but it really works great in the cockpit. It has preset alarms, but they are customizable. I think the presets are at 35 and 200 ppm, parts per million. But you can set those to other levels if you'd like a better detection at lower levels. There's a sensor and a battery inside of there that is replaceable, but usually these will last well over 2 years without having any service, and they really work great for aviation. The next is just kind of a neat product in the cockpit, or in the hangar rather, or at home, but this is called the Air Gun, and it is a cordless air compressor that has a rechargeable battery on it. The valve tip screws onto the valve. You can program the desired pressure into the little panel there, and then you just hit the button and you walk away from it. and eventually it will just inflate your tire to that exact pressure. We used this on a Cessna, and it inflated it from 36 pounds to 50 pounds in about a minute, minute and a half, and it was dead on perfect. So it works great for our aircraft, and it also works great in your garage at home. Ram introduced a new Sun Visor, and as with all Ram parts, they're all interchangeable. So if you have a drawer full of these things, it will probably work with some of the parts you already have. But this is a kit that we put together that has a sun visor, an arm, and a suction cup. It's relatively inexpensive. It's under 80 bucks, and it works great. A lot of the older aircraft with factory sun visors that are either broken or don't work well, this is a really inexpensive option compared to the install options that are out there. And you can take it with you when you're done with it. Last but not least are the gifts we have here at Sporty's. We just introduced a new Pilot Wings leather collection this year, and it's going really, really well. It's made with some really nice, supple goatskin leather. It includes in the collection there's a leather bag, a duffel bag you see there, a shaving kit, and then a jacket that's really modeled off the Navy G2 from days prior. We rounded out the collection with a little wallet that includes a little ramp pass insert, which has 3 spots for your pilot identification documents. So your medical, your pilot's license, and your driver's license can all fit in here, and it's nice and organized, and it really works great. Put this on your list for this Christmas, because I'm sure there'll be hot items. And then we'll wrap it up with John.
Thanks, Doug. We promised you 10 trends, so we gave you 10, but wanted to close with a bonus of sort of what's coming next. Talk to you about 2 trends that are here, but I think are going to be even bigger into 2016 and 2017 and beyond. So I want to give you a clue on these. First is not a surprise probably, but it's ADS-B, and specifically ADS-B out. We talked earlier about ADS-B receivers like the Stratus for your iPad, and that's ADS-B in. That's the part where we get that subscription-free weather. Well, ADS-B out is the other half of the system here, where you install something in your panel. ADS-B, as a pilot told me recently, it's a 4-letter word, and for a lot of aircraft owners, that's true, because equipping with ADS-B out, it's going to mean you're going to spend some money. It is something we all have to do by 2020 for the most part, and there are some benefits to it. So let's look real quick. Again, we could talk all night about ADS-B, and indeed we have our separate presentation you can view on ADS-B. But here's, I think, 5 essential things to know on ADS-B out. Number 1, it will be required pretty much everywhere you need a mode C transponder today on January 1st, 2020. So if you're inside Class B or inside the Class B veil, the 30 nautical mile veil, or if you're in Class C airspace, or you're flying in above 18,000 feet, all these places where you need a transponder today, you're going to need a ADS-B out transponder by 2020. Number 2 is important because in addition to that ADS-B out transponder, you have to have an approved position source, which basically means a WAAS GPS, in that your transponder is not just reporting kind of who you are or what altitude you're at, but also it's tied to that GPS source, so it provides a very accurate position report. Number 3 notes that ADS-B out has to be panel mount, so unfortunately there is no portable option for this like there is for ADS-B in, like a Stratus or a Garmin GDL39. ADS-B out's got to be in the panel installed by your A&P or avionics shop. ADS-B in is optional. That is totally up to you. You don't have to get the weather and traffic. And number 5, we won't get into the details, but there's 2 different versions of ADS-B out, 2 frequencies, 978 megahertz and 1090. Just worth pointing out that if you do install a remote-mounted 978 box, you will need to keep your Mode C transponder. In the case of 1090, it really replaces your transponder, so it upgrades it for you. So again, lots to talk about with ADS-B, but those are really the essentials, hopefully, that you're starting to come to grips with a little bit. There are tons and tons of options for ADS-B out. We couldn't possibly cover them all tonight. Garmin has a number of great options. Free Flight has some options. L3 with their Lynx product has some good ones. Aspen, Avidyne, everybody's got ADS-B out. The right answer really depends on your airplane and what kind of flying you do. did want to draw your attention to one new one, since we're talking about new products here, that has recently been announced and will be shipping in 2016. It's from Appario, the people that make Stratus, the portable receiver, and it's called Stratus ESG. It's an all-in-one box, so it's your 1090 ES ADS-B out transponder, and it includes that WAS GPS, so it's an all-in-one solution. If you don't have a WAS GPS in your panel, like a Garmin 430W or a GTN 750 or something like that, this is a great option because it includes both pieces. It also integrates with a Stratus Portable, so if you already have a Stratus Portable, that's your ADS-B in, this is your ADS-B out. It's panel mount installed, so it's not remote mount. That means it's a lot less expensive to install than those remote mount boxes. It's $34.90, including the antennas and the mounting hardware. So really all in, when you think about installation, which is a critical piece of ADS-B out, it's one of the better values out there, because installed, it's going to be competitive with anything out there. Not certified yet, but certification is expected early in 2016. They are well down final approach on that. One other trend we wanted to point out is drones, and you pretty much can't pick up a newspaper or log on to your computer without reading about drones these days. There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of panic, there's a lot of good and bad, but it's worth noting, I think, that there are plenty of good things about drones. Number one, they are fun and easy to fly, so if you're into RC airplanes or something like that, drones are fun. They're great for videos. We talked a little bit about this with GoPros, and the final piece there, though, is something we really believe in at Sporty's. You know, it may seem silly, but flying a drone is still flying, and it requires airmanship. Just like it requires airmanship to fly an airplane, you should approach flying a drone in a serious way, thinking about airspace and safety and weather and all those kind of things you think about in a Cessna. So we're really hoping pilots can lead by example here and maybe encourage some of the people out there that aren't so responsible with their drones. If you are interested in drones, we have partnered with Unique to offer what we think is really the best lineup out there on affordable quadcopters. It's certainly one of the hottest gifts this Christmas, and we think these are some of the best, especially for pilots. They're really easy to fly, and they're all-in-one solutions. So there's really nothing extra here. This is not a build-it-yourself kind of thing where there's always a footnote or an asterisk. And Unique offers 3 models. Starting at the lower end is a great model that is built for GoPro. So if you already have a GoPro HERO3 Plus or HERO4, you can buy this model. Has a gimbal, so it's not just a fixed camera. It includes the controller. Step up to one with a built-in 1080p camera, so you don't have to supply the GoPro. It includes a camera, or all the way with a 4K camera. We've done a lot of flying with these Unique drones, and they're really impressive because they're very, very stable. You can take your hands off the controller. It'll hold a perfect hover for you. The steerable gimbal's great. You can take some incredible video with it. You don't have to fly the drone. You can just move the gimbal. It's got a great controller with a built-in screen, so you don't have to use your phone as the screen or anything like that. It's just really a great flying experience. It's reliable. You can get service and parts for them. So these range from about $900 to about $1,200, $1,300 all in. So if you're really looking for a drone that's a quadcopter that's above sort of just the toy crash it and move on phase, but isn't going to break the bank, this is a great lineup, and you'll certainly see only more in the field of drones coming up. With that, we'll end our presentation, but we did want to save just a couple minutes for questions. You see our emails up there on the screen if you wanted to share some questions afterwards if you think of them. But with the time left, wanted to answer just a couple questions. Doug, I'm going to throw this first one to you. Really a generic question in a way about the new iPads. And Apple has announced the new iPad Mini 4 and the iPad Pro. Talk about mounts for those new products. Are the current ones compatible with those? Or are you going to have to buy something new?
That's a great question, John. Now, luckily, they did not change the size of the iPad Mini when they went to the iPad Mini 4. So many of the knee boards and the mounting systems that are out there will work with the iPad Mini 4. Keep in mind, sometimes they change the locations of the buttons. So if you have a form-fitting case for an iPad Mini 1, it's probably not going to be a form-fitting case for the iPad Mini 4. So, but most RAM mounts out there will work fine for it, and even many of the Sporty's knee boards will accommodate an iPad Mini 4. Looking at the iPad Pro, I'm positive there will be some RAM mounting solutions out there by the time that starts shipping, but we haven't seen any yet. I would stay tuned for that, and I'm sure you'll have some way of mounting that in the cockpit. Keep in mind that the iPad Pro is massive. It is by far the largest iPad out there, so mounting it on a yoke might not be the best option, but I'm sure if you have a panel that's large enough, there might be something you can do to put it in a way that's still in your face but not covering everything at the same time.
Thanks, Doug. We had a couple other questions here just about iPad and sort of the new models and specs. So let me give you my answer on a couple of these. There's 3 available models now. The iPad Pro, which as Doug said, is probably going to be too big for most cockpits. There's the iPad Air 2, and there's the new iPad Mini 4. We see typically the Mini and the Air, that's roughly sort of a 7-inch screen and a 10-inch screen. It's pretty much 50-50 in terms of pilots. Lots of pilots do just fine with the Mini. There's really not much of a compromise there. But the Air is nice if you got a little more size. Bigger screen's better. The new iPad Mini 4 is a real upgrade. So if you get lost in all the Apple models, the iPad Mini 3, which they released in 2014, wasn't much of an upgrade, actually. There wasn't much different behind the scenes. The iPad Mini 4 is an upgrade. So with this latest setup, the iPad Air 2 and the iPad Mini 4, you've really got the same hardware, the same speed of processor, the same quality screen and everything, just 2 different sizes. So the difference between those is really just the screen size. Pick the one that works for you. In terms of what the best one is for pilots, I had a couple questions about, what do you recommend? I would recommend either the Air or the Mini, as we said, but really like 32 gigabytes minimum memory. And really, that's not even an option anymore. Most of the new models, they come in either 16 or 64 gigabyte or 128 on the high end. I think 64 is a smart buy. You can do it with 16, but you really have to watch your storage. So I recommend for sure the 64 if you can swing it. It's only about another $100 more. The other question you have there with an iPad is, do you want the LTE or the cell service model, like a cellular phone, or do you just want to have the Wi-Fi model? That's a pretty personal question in general. Again, depends on how you fly, but either one works. You certainly do not need the LTE model for aviation, especially if you're going to fly with an external GPS or a Stratus or something like that. You're already going to have that GPS position. So I don't think there's a bad buy there. If you think you are going to use the cellular service, in other words, if you think you want a data connection on the go, that LTE model is great, but don't count on it in the air. On the other hand, if you don't think you'd use that, if you don't travel a whole lot maybe, and you don't think you'd use that LTE service, I would not buy it just because it might kind of work in the air, because it really won't. And you can save some money by going with the Wi-Fi model. That's what I fly with. I fly with an iPad Air 2, 64 gigabytes of storage, and Wi-Fi only, and connect it to a Stratus. With that, folks, we're just up against our time, and so we're going to go. We thank you for joining us for the presentation. Again, if you think of questions afterwards, feel free to drop us an email and check out the recording of this webinar at sportys.com/webinars. With that, we'll bid you good night and hope to see you again on another Sportys webinar soon.